Om Tare Du Tare Du Re So Ha. Om Tare Du Tare Du Re So Ha.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad we have the opportunity to join together, even though I'm away. I believe you just finished meditation, so for those who care to, I'd like to invite you to join me in the refuge prayer, taking a moment to bring to mind the Buddha in the space in front of you. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha through the positive potential I create by practicing generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. May attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha through the positive potential I create by practicing generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. May attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha through the positive potential I create by practicing generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. May attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. All right. Well, as I mentioned, grateful to be with you, even though I'm traveling. I think I'll probably be getting close to home by the time you are attending the teaching here. So, where we're at is one of the most transformative practices available in Tibetan Buddhism. It's the practice of Tonglen, of giving and taking. This practice, well, it was secret for a long time. It was made only available to practitioners with a really strong basis of understanding of emptiness and training, and was thought to be just so potent that it needed to be delivered in a proper context to the right vessel, the person that is ripe for this. Over the years, actually, when I began training, talking back 2000, around there, it started to become more available. And what's been, I think, from my context and my understanding, is that it's such an important practice. And we can seed this practice into the world with a good context. And certain right minds will be able to use it in the times that we're living in. And the need for it was so great that it became permission granted to offer this practice. So really quite wonderful to have this profound practice available to us. It is something that sometimes, well, I wouldn't say it needs to be approached thoughtfully. Sometimes it's just not right for certain people and could be a little apprehensive about it. Some people go too far in one way as well. So really important to have a grounding around this practice. First and foremost, and this is where the foundation of this practice needs to be, is to have some deep sense of understanding that the root cause of our suffering is this self-centeredness, right? You'll see it in the text, and we've talked about it many times, as self-cherishing, which is not self-worth, self-value. Incredibly grateful of the rare and precious life we have. Self-cherishing in the sense of self-centeredness, grasping onto ourselves in a way we do not exist, and trying to protect the very prison that we're in, rather than understanding that we are interdependent, that we are arising moment to moment, that that thing I'm identifying with as me is not who I am. And that is the root cause of samsara. Grasping to myself in a way I do not exist, and all the afflictive states that come with that. So what we're doing in this practice is going at the root of that self-centeredness and cutting through that grasping. And when you recognize that this is really the point, the foundation of this practice, then there's not much to worry about. What are we worrying about? Giving up the source of our suffering? Not a big deal. But having said that, that's a nice intellectual understanding. We're going to find that we'll have some feelings come up and some grasping around, what about me? And so in this practice, when we can approach it thoughtfully with the proper context, we can become willing to just get to the main point of all our suffering and start letting go of that. So this practice of taking and giving, what we're doing is we're becoming willing to take on the suffering of others right to ourselves, that we would be willing to take on their suffering, that we would be willing to take it on ourselves. Big statement, right? And so that gets right to the heart of, well, I don't want their suffering. I don't want to feel bad. I want to take care of myself. And so as we become willing to take on that suffering right here into our heart center, heart-mind center. Well, talk about a willingness to sacrifice. What are we really sacrificing? We're sacrificing our self-centeredness, our self-importance of a self that doesn't exist in the way that we're grabbing onto it. So you can see how immediately it's going to go right to that sense of self that imprisons us. So in this practice, become willing to see the suffering of others, become willing to take it upon ourselves. And then give, taking and giving. Giving, we're going to give all of our virtue, all of our merit, all of that to those who are suffering so that they don't have to suffer and that they can flourish, that they can receive the healing they need, receive the mental and emotional stability they need, all the things that we would want. And so an entirely selfless act, the ability to take on the suffering of others and to give our virtue to them. You can see how it could be a little, well, anxious about that. So it's nice to engage in this practice thoughtfully. First and foremost, knowing that what we are giving up is self that isn't who we are. It's actually a sense of self that's imprisoning us and filled with afflictions. And in this process, if we can continuously do it, we're going to find much less grasping to the source of our suffering, a heart opening of bodhicitta, of great compassion towards all beings, and ultimately a liberation from our own suffering. But again, that's the context. But the moment we start doing this so that we suffer less, then we're in the wrong mental state. It's really about recognizing the suffering of others and becoming willing to reduce that suffering. Bodhicitta is the desire to remove the suffering of others, that we're willing to do what we need to for that. So in this practice, as we prepare, I'm going to kind of give the basics of that. It's really valuable to start small, start with someone that we know, that we love, that we care about. They're struggling. Maybe they're ill. Maybe they're in the hospital. Maybe they're having some other emotional problems right now. For example, as I'm speaking, just my daughters, their cat's passing. And, she texted me yesterday. And, that whole family suffering and the cat itself, Dexter. Um, he's going through a transition. So something like that, I can visualize taking on their grief, their suffering, all the negative karma maybe that Dexter's ever had in his life, taking that on myself and then giving all of virtue to them. Start with people you care about, a struggle you're very knowledgeable of, that you're aware of. And if we do this a little bit with that practice, then we can then expand it to some other people. There's struggles in this world. There's struggles here in the United States. There's just killing in Minnesota, and you think about the grief and the struggles there. You can bring in the struggles, the suffering, the grief of the people of Minneapolis right now, what they're going through. Take that on, give them your virtue, see them receiving what they need, see them getting better. You can expand this out in many ways. Essentially, though, it's potent when we really have a real openness to it. That's why it's helpful to start with people we do know about, that we are willing to do that with, and then engage in the practice. It's interesting, the text here offered two versions. They offered a version I've never heard before that one could practice if it's a new practice, about your own suffering of a future self with future problems that might come your way, and you kind of practice taking that on, and your future self, can be relieved of that. Yeah, I've never actually heard that taught or practiced. But if you find it helpful, you can check that out in the text here in the commentary. Um, this is the practice that's been the lineage passed down to me through my teacher, and I'll just describe it briefly, and then we'll take just a very brief run through. And so the idea here is to first take a little time to ground, to settle body, speech, and mind as we do. And then taking a moment to recognize our own self-cherishing, our own self-centeredness is this little dark spot. You can't see me, I'm pointing down my heart, but a little dark spot. It's right at our heart center. That's that grasping. That's that self-centeredness, self-cherishing, grasping, root of all. Um, well, cause of our samsara. And then we bring to mind a person or people that we would like to engage in this practice with. We take a little time, we bring clearly to mind their struggle, their suffering. We can visualize them there. Maybe if they're in a hospital bed, even see their pain, their worry, their fear. Then just take a little time to bring it really present, and then arouse the aspiration. May they be free of the suffering. I would like to take on their suffering. Let me take on their suffering so they need not suffer like this anymore. And with that aspiration, the visualization is that as you breathe in, you're drawing out from them in a dark smoke, all of their suffering, their illness, whatever that issue is. Maybe it's the emotional grief that they're going through. If it's an illness, and you're going to take that smoke. It comes out of their body. Sometimes you can really visualize in the form of their nostril. It pulls out and it comes into our nostrils. It goes down to our heart center. And the moment it strikes our heart center, that dark spot just explodes open to this radiant white, healing light of our virtue, merit, and wisdom. And then that white, radiant healing light comes out through our nostrils and goes into the person or people that we are visualizing, and they receive it. They become more vibrant. They become more alive, more well, more free. And so, quite an elaborate visualization to bring it all together in one uh, or two breaths. But with practice, we get better at it. But as long as we can bring to mind that as we breathe in and it hits our heart center, we take on their struggle. Our virtue, our merit, our bodhicitta rises out through our breath and goes to them. They receive it. And with each breath, we're drawing out their illness. With each exhalation, they're receiving this healing. And we do it for a period of time. And with each out breath, we see them getting better, receiving what they need. That's the practice of Tonglen, of taking and giving. And so, having said that, I thought it'd be nice to just do a brief run through, and then we'll wrap up and I'll let you discuss with each other your experience. So, let's begin by just taking a few moments to ground, to become aware of your body, to settle body, speech, and mind. Don't worry about who you're going to engage in this practice with yet. Just let go and just become aware of your breath. Breath that sustains and gives life to you. And now let's become aware of our own self-centeredness, self-cherishing that resides at the very core, deep, little dark spot in our heart. That sense of self that selfish, engages and judges others based on what we think about them, what we want. So becoming aware of it doesn't make us bad people. I think it's actually the conditioning and confusion that gives rise to the life that we have. It's the obstruction that blinds us to our liberation and our Buddha potential. Me first, grasping, just becoming aware of that, visualizing it, a little dark spot at your heart center, and recognizing how much trouble it's caused in your life. Resentments, anger, frustrations, insecurities, anxiety. All about me. And then now let's recognize our potential, Buddha nature. Yeah, our ultimate nature, not limited, not confused. The ability to be a benefit to all beings, that is our ultimate nature. And as we bring to mind this Buddha nature, this nature that's infused with bodhicitta, great compassion, let's bring to mind someone or a few people that we know are struggling, that are suffering some way. Bring them as clearly present in your mind as possible. The nature of their suffering, and let your compassion arise, this bodhicitta, your desire to have them be free of suffering, and your willingness to take on that suffering. And with this bodhicitta motivation, this great compassion, let us begin the practice of Tonglen, being very clear of our object of suffering, our person or people. And as we breathe in, let the awareness be that we are drawing their suffering into ourselves. And as the breath hits our heart center, that dark spot, it just breaks open. And this bodhicitta, this healing compassion, arises, radiant white light that exits our nostrils and is received by our object of suffering. And you can see them be a little better, a little more vibrant, a little healthier, a little less worried, whatever it be. And so we'll just breathe for a few minutes. And with each breath, allow yourself to take on their suffering and give your virtue, your healing, seeing them getting better with each breath. And now gently taking a moment to see them healthier, better, relieved of suffering that they are struggling with. They're not struggling. Taking a moment to dedicate any and all merit from this practice. May this practice not simply relieve the suffering of the object, people I've been focusing on, but may the power of this practice of bodhicitta find its way into the world. May the merit of it support my ability to be of benefit to others, that they may be free of suffering. And dedicating the merit for my continued spiritual growth to be able to engage in these practices of liberation, not merely for myself, but so that I can be of benefit to all beings. And then when you're ready, just bringing your awareness forward. All right, well, in a few moments, I'll sign off and I'll let you all have some discussion time. Wish I could be there to debrief with all of you. I do want to address a few points though. Again, important to start with comfort level that you're open to. And some people get very nervous around the idea of maybe taking the cancer on that somebody's going through. And if you're uncomfortable with that idea, don't do it. You work your way to that. Are you actually capable of taking on their cancer? Not really. Um, but if you're doing it with the idea that, well, I know I won't really get their cancer, so yeah, I'll do this practice, you've undermined the practice. The power of this practice is the fact that you would be willing to. That's what cuts through self-grasping. That's what cuts through self-centeredness. The power of this practice is that we would be willing to actually endure the suffering that they're going through. And you could see how that would just cut right through my own self-grasping. So as long as we've got all these reservations in our mind, then we're doing a practice, then it's not going to have much power to it. But when we, like a mother, often would take on that illness of a child, that kind of mind, this practice is radically transformative. So I encourage you to explore with it if it feels like a good fit for you. My primary teacher and guru, Geshe Sultan Geltsen, uh, the lineage of this practice for me, they used to call him the Tonglen Lama. He said if he was breathing, he was doing Tonglen. And he's probably breathing through his whole life there. So it's also a practice you can do when you're walking. People do it in line. I was thinking around taking on the struggles of people in line at an airport and their struggles and their anxiety, just taking their suffering, giving your virtue to them. And so as long as you're breathing, you can be doing this practice, and it doesn't need to be as formal as I just did. If you do it more formally and you get good at it, comfortable with it, be able to notice maybe and you're at a medical clinic waiting for your appointment, seeing the illness of others and the struggles, the fears, you can take that on and just sit there quietly. So it's a practice that you can do quite a bit, and if it feels natural to you, or or if you practice and you feel comfortable with it, it's like I said, one of the most powerful transformative practices in all of Tibetan Buddhism. So with that, I will well, just sign off and let you engage. I hope you stay on, engage with each other, have a little discussion about your practice. I'll be back in person next week, and any other questions about it, we can pick it up then. So please be well. Thanks for all the goodness you bring to the world. Hope you have a rich discussion. Thank you, Rachel, for facilitating the discussion and our dedication. Be well.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om